What's going on, my trainer club? I wanted to bring a video that I have not ever done before. I am going to explain the concept of IVs and CPs and help you understand how to appraise, how to pick the best Pokemon, and how to be the best trainer that you can be with the best guys in your bag. So, welcome to the trainer club. Here we go. It is a beautiful day today, everyone. I hope it is just as beautiful where you are. Drop in the comments if you are 100% confident, comfortable, and knowledgeable about your IVs. And if not, let me know why, because I really want to know, and I see this question quite a lot, and it comes up all the time, and I know there's tons of experienced players that watch me, but there's also some players that are out there looking for more information in regards to IVs, appraisals, what the best Pokemon to utilize, and how to make sure that you are going after the best Pokemon and investing your Stardust and candy properly, because the Stardust is super crucial, and it is a very hot commodity in the game, meaning that you can do a ton with it. So we want to make sure not to just get guys, power them up, and then realize later that, hey, maybe I should have powered somebody else up. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you how to break down how to appraise per team and what the IV values are. We're also going to check out what the base stats are for Pokemon, meaning do the actual IVs matter that much for different types of Pokemon. And additionally, I'm going to give you my resources. There are 3 really good resources to appraise with externally of Pokemon Go. So let's get right into it. Starting off, there are 3 different values that we are going to look at in Pokemon Go. And the 3 values are going to be stamina, which is also referred to as HP, defense, and then attack. So these are going to be the 3 values that are going to calculate together to form the overall CP, which stands for combat power. So the number 1, HP or stamina, it's just going to be how long it can last in battle. So it's just kind of like an overall, how much health will this Pokemon be able to have. And the second one, which is going to be very important, especially in the cases of legendaries, is going to be the attack stat. And the attack is how much damage can this Pokemon do in the battle towards other Pokemon. And then finally, defense. And what defense is basically how much damage the Pokemon can resist during battle. So when you're getting hit in battle, how many of those hits can the Pokemon kind of resist and shell away while trying to survive? And so that is why when we are appraising, which we are going to get to in a little bit, why we see it'll say like something like attack or defense or HP, and then it'll give a value after that. And that means that there's going to have different values per Pokemon. But now we're going to go to what base stats are. So base stats are kind of like a benchmark. Every Pokemon has a base stat, meaning that Pokemon, let's say that we have like I'm just going to randomly pick something and make it up right now. Let's just say that we have a Groudon, and its base stats are going to be like 300 attack, 300 defense, 300 stamina, just to make this easy, right? I know that's not actually what they are. So that Pokemon is going to be 300, 300, 300 strong without any additional additions, which we're going to talk about in a second, which are the IVs. So the base stats basically like, okay, this Pokemon at a minimum can be this strong. And then the IVs, which is what we all talk about when you hear us saying like 98%, 100%, 50%, 0%, means how much of those IVs, which is like 300, if we have 100%, that means it's going to add on 15 to the attack, 15 to the defense, 15 to the stamina. So instead of it being all 300, it's going to be 315, 315, 315, right? And so that's why you can see that sometimes the 100% are really sought after, because it's making the Pokemon stats as high as they can possibly go. But in reality, since there is a huge differential and the actual base stats are already pretty high, it typically ranges from about 10 to 6 to 10% about how much you can actually improve this Pokemon's performance. So we're not talking about like 50% or 100%, or if it's got 0% IVs, that means it does no damage at all, no defense at all, no stamina, it dies with 1 hit. That's not what we're talking about here, which is commonly confused. And I think that's one point that I really wanted to address, is that they all have base stats, and these IVs are just adding to 3 categories of their base stats to see what is the best potential. So obviously 100% IV is going to be the highest values that Pokemon can potentially get. And IVs will add on. And it's known that each Pokemon species actually has very similar base stats. So like Dragon Pokemon are going to have similar base stats, and then they're going to add on their IVs. So when we're thinking about the IVs, just think about added on stats. It's just like a plug on top. It's like, you know, I have a really fast car and I put a supercharger in it so it goes just a little bit faster. Without the supercharger, that doesn't mean it doesn't move, right? It still goes pretty fast, but the supercharger, and let's say it's got like a 0 to 15 ratio, that 15 is like the fastest supercharger you can get. The 0 means that it's just at its stock fast power, right? So think about that as IVs. That is basically what IVs do. And each Pokemon that you encounter in the wild is going to have a different ratio of stats, right? So it can be all the way from 0, 0, 0 to 15, 15, 15, and any combination in there between. There are different floors depending on how you acquire this Pokemon, whether it's a raid boss, whether you hatch it, or whether you trade it, or whether it becomes a lucky. So we're going to check that out and make sure that you guys know what the best way to acquire your Pokemon are. And so with this random combination of the IVs that you can acquire, this is why it's heavily influenced and encouraged to make sure you know what the IVs of your Pokemon are before you start powering them up, especially certain Pokemon. So like if it's a legendary, right? You're obviously going to have to power it up from level 20 or 25, which isn't all that much of a difference, and they're all going to have a base floor. So let's say that like for this Giratina origin form, it's been out for a month. I wouldn't start powering up anything unless you get that 100%, which is a 2105. How you get the different CPs is literally just a calculation of how close all of these numbers are to perfect. If it's all 15 stats, it puts the Pokemon at like 2105 for the Giratina origin form. And let's say that it's all 10s, because that's the base floor for legendaries, 10, 10, 10, attack, defense, and stamina. That means that it's probably going to be about, I don't even know what the bottom one is. Let's say it's going to be like 2030. Right? So you can go from a 2030 all the way to a 2105. And that, when you're starting to power those guys up, the 2105 will go, let's say, to about 3650. I don't know exactly what it is. It's somewhere around there. But then let's say the 10-10-10 one may go to about 3550. So you're looking at about 100 CP ratio difference when it's powered all the way up to the top. So for legendaries, it's definitely a good idea to check your IVs because they take a lot of dust and candy and they're very good at attacking. But if we're looking at something like a wild Pokemon, let's say you hatched or you encountered in a quest like a 98% Electabuzz, let's say, and you want to make an Electivire, right? So you use your Sinnoh Stone. That level 15 to get all the way to level 40 or even level 35 is going to be quite a bit of dust and candy to put into it. But let's say it's raining outside and you catch a level 35 Electabuzz, right? And I would say that maybe if you don't plan on actually maxing these guys, just evolving that Electabuzz and utilizing it, even though it doesn't have the best IVs, will deliver more power, obviously, and damage than this one with really good IVs and low without having to use a ton of dust. So that's one strategy that you can use, is using and utilizing the weather boost to your advantage, finding those Pokemon with those weather boosts, evolving them, and then you can go ahead and you can use those guys in battle instead of going ahead and powering all these 100% IVs up if you're not super Stardust rich, right? If you have a ton of Stardust and you're willing to utilize it and you've caught like hundreds of thousands of Pokemon and you're like, hey man, I got like 5-6 million Stardust, I don't mind powering these guys up. I'm okay spending 200,000 Stardust to power one up. Then good, amazing, that's awesome. You're gonna have the most powerful guy for sure. But if you're looking for a team and you're like just hit level 40 or you're kind of new to the game, look for those weather boost Pokemon. Utilize those guys to go after the pretty good guys when you're going into raid battles and stuff like that without having to use a ton of resources. So now let's check out a Charizard, its base stats, and then we're going to add on some of its IVs on top of it. So checking it out here, we have the Charizard. So its base stats, meaning that with it having no IVs added in at all, it is going to have a stamina of 156, an attack of 223, and a defense of 176. So oftentimes when we're looking at the Pokemon, right, and we're like, oh, new raid boss is out, and you'll see me list the stats of the attack, the defense, the stamina, right? Those are going to be the base stats to the Pokemon. And then on top of that, I'll say it has a max CP of this. That means if you get 100%, all the attack, defense, and stamina are 15 at its absolute highest, it can go all the way to a max CP of whatever we list. So back to this Charizard, we're looking here, and so after those base stats, then we're going to look at, in the second column, we're looking at the IVs. So let's say on the top tier, right, we're gonna look at the top one. It's gonna be a 91% IV, so it's pretty close to 100, right? 100% is obviously the best. It's got a stamina of 13, it's got an attack of 14, and defense of 14 for the total stats of 595, which makes it a 91%. And then if we go to the second row, we're looking at a 60% IV with a stamina of 9, an attack of 3, and a defense of 15 for a total of 582. And each of these categories is weighted a little bit differently. You'll notice sometimes you'll see like, hey, I got a 98, but it's a lower CP than my 96. And it just didn't have the high attack value, right? 98 meant it had a 14 attack rather than a 15 attack. And you'll look at these guys and sometimes like, wow, why is my Pokemon like a 98 but this 96 is higher? It's because those stats, like the attack value, are going to be weighted higher because it's going to do more damage and it's going to create a bigger influence for that Pokemon's ability than it would be if it had those other two at 15. So you will notice that sometimes. And then in the third column, we have a 36% IV. So we have a 4 stamina, a 12 attack, and a 0 defense for a total of 571. So if it was a 0%, there was no IVs added on, it would be a 555. Adding it on, right, because 555 is already pretty strong. You're adding on a total potential of 45 to make it a 600 potential, right? It can get all the way to 600 as a Pokemon. So the 100% stats would be at 600. Notice like 550 to 600, that's only 50 points. We're not talking like astronomical numbers here. So yes, IVs do matter, right? I personally only try to power up like 98s and 100% of these Pokemon, right? Unless it's like a really, really useful Pokemon and I just didn't get it, like it's a legendary, maybe Rayquaza. I have a 96 attack stat being the highest. I may consider powering that, even though I know that Rayquaza is going to come back with a shiny, so I still have higher potential to get to the top. I have Dragonites that are boosted up. I have these Pokemon, and it all depends on where you are as a trainer. If you're new, you're like, I want to get in there. I got a pretty decent Rayquaza. It's a 96 attack stat. I need Dragon Pokemon. Choose that guy, right? We cover that in my Dragon video, what the best Dragon Pokemon to power up are depending on where you're at for you as a trainer. So there's a lot of information to cover here, and we had to break it down into a couple parts to make sure that we get you all of this information. The first part is going to be how to IV check her team, and then we're also going to go over what the best ways to check are based on the applications that are available to us. So check this out on the next video.